Now, Nigeria's new Dangote Petroleum Refinery is Africa's single biggest refinery in the oil and gas industry. It's expected to produce 650,000 barrels a day, given its potential to address the country's energy supply crisis. Well, for the non-oil sector, the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Export Promotion, Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Dr. Ezra Yakusak, he says the refinery will definitely help increase the nation's exporting potentials. Take a listen.
This refinery is one of the best things that is happening in Nigeria. It's going to happen in Nigeria. As an agency in charge of non-oil export, this is going to change the trajectory in our economy. But one important thing is that most people don't realize that petroleum or refinery like this produces byproducts that are non-oil export, has non-oil export components. And it goes directly in line with the mandate of Nigeria Export Promotion Council to promote non-oil export. So with the launch or the commissioning of this facility, the non-oil export in the country will increase and the foreign exchange of Nigeria will certainly increase.
Also, the Executive Secretary of the National Action Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area. He was the former Executive Director and CEO of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council then, but now that's his new post. That's Mr. Olusegun Awolowo. He also bared his mind on this very, very important project. Take a listen.
We're going to see in terms of transformation and in terms of revenue that will accrue to this country from non-oil, because when crude oil is processed, it becomes non-oil. And we now are able to export fertilizer, urea, so many other products to not only to Africa, but to the world. But starting with the African Continental Free Trade Area, this is a major thing, game changer for the economy of this country. And I'm really proud that Aliko Dangote took this plunge. And we must encourage other African business entrepreneurs to be as bold as he is, you know, and that's the only way we can transform this economy.
Mr. Olusegun Awolowo there. Now, for the President-elect, Bola Tinubu, who was represented at the inauguration by Vice President-elect, Mr. Kashim Shettima, the project will have a huge impact on the growth of the nation's economy.
Given the huge prospects of this gigantic project in reversing Nigeria's near Africa's reliance on imported petroleum products, in generating the much needed foreign exchange, in generating a humongous quantum of jobs, and in stabilizing the Naira, it is safe to say that the Dangote refinery will be the most consequential single project to come on stream in recent times, and is bound to have a huge impact on the growth and development of our economy and positively influence the life and well-being of our people. I would therefore like, on behalf of the President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to heartily commend and congratulate Alhaji Aliko Dangote and the Dangote Group for not only ambition in this significant project, but for their courage, resilience, and staying power in bringing this outstanding edifice to fruition.
Well, let's talk more about the impact of this newly inaugurated refinery and its, of course, on pricing and every other thing that has to do with supply of petroleum products. And I introduced him earlier. He's a partner and senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. Mr. Alaje, good afternoon. It's good to have you on the show to talk about this very important project.
Good afternoon, and thank you so very much for having me.
Mr. Alaje, 650,000 barrels is the capacity of this refinery. More than 100,000 jobs to be created. First, for me, is how this will help address the issue of petroleum supply shortage that we faced in recent times. Do you think that it is all well with the downstream of Nigeria's oil and gas industry because of this singular project?
First of all, we must thank God for the PIA. It used to be PIB, the passage of PIA makes this very possible that the supply side will receive a major boost while demand remains relatively constant. The supply side would ensure that the scarcity we have seen in the market, the smuggling we have seen in the market, some persons have been alleged to have been taking some of our PMS to the neighboring country. All of those will disappear because you even have more than enough supply in Nigeria. 650 barrels of crude on daily basis. That is huge. When that is converted into liters, that is the PMS, AGO, and all other products, you are going to have more than what we require as a country. And I think it's the beginning of the economic growth for Africa. I don't think this would only affect Nigeria. I strongly believe that Africa or Nigeria would have remained a country that would have, whether you like it or not, an unpredictable growth for a long time if you don't have a stable energy sector. Because there is virtually nothing you can do without energy. And I've cited this example time and again. Name any country in the world that is having significant growth. If energy have not been sufficiently, issues around energy have not been sufficiently resolved. China today is producing more than 50% of all need of steel around the world. Not 5%, 50%. The next country close to China is producing less than 10% of what China is producing. Why? Because the quantum of energy supply available in China, and in this regard, I'm talking of the entire sector. For Nigeria, this is the beginning of a good thing to us. And I call this a major game changer. Because what will power our industry at relatively reasonable rates, reasonable price, is what is coming out of refinery. 2, people are even going to work. How do they get to work on time? We also have, how do we accelerate progress in our economy? Aliko Dangote Group Refinery has come to solve those problems. And I must say that the problem solving will go beyond just the supply side of PMS, job creation, which is so very important, whether direct or indirect job. It has come to fill the gap, to reduce significantly unavailability of job or unemployment as we have in Nigeria today. Leave that aside. You also look at FX. The major challenge we have had and why we continue to have inflation high is because when you look at the National Bureau of Statistics report, inflation at urban center is far higher than what we have at the rural area. So we say urban inflation is growing faster than what is happening in rural area. If you check what people consume in urban area, you see that they are mostly imported. And anything you import, exchange rate will have a major reflection in what you import. So, but with this refinery, what does it mean to us? It means we are going to save the central bank between 20 to 23 million that would have been provided to keep importing PMS into Nigeria. So that's big news for us. We're going to have we're going to have significant growth in our foreign reserve. And that means that in the coming period, we're going to see an increase in the value of Naira, say from August, September, October, thereabouts. We are going to see a major increase in the supply. And you could see that by the end of this month, somewhere around next month, you start seeing that balance. It might not be a major reduction, but you start seeing that balance. So I pity those who are still holding dollars in their pockets, hoping that Naira will keep getting depleted. I think they need to have a rethink, because when these refineries start functioning, monies that is depleting more than almost a quarter of our foreign reserve on daily or weekly basis may not be the case anymore. They will need, central bank can now formulate better policy to come out and defend Naira as we used to know it. So it could be good news. It will eventually be good news for all of us if monetary authority can partner with their fiscal counterparts, and of course to combat all of this. So this refinery, like I said, is a game changer. There is several layers to it that we can explain. Even in those in allied industry, it's going to be a major support for them. Unlike when you buy diesel today, you are not sure what the price will be tomorrow. But with this, there seems to be a way we can plan. We know that this is what the market is saying. After all, we hope Dangote will buy in Naira. It is buying in Naira from Nigerian government. Being an indigenous company, it means that so those people who are also producing could plan what they are producing, and you can see steady in the price of commodity. What that means again is that it will have impact on inflation. So you can trace one single refinery to macroeconomic variable, the implication on different macroeconomic variable. And that is why I said, overall, when you compare the negatives and the positives, you say it's a game changer for Nigeria, an entire West Africa, and that could be extended to Africa. Because extended to Africa because we're in a continent that has so much spoken of African continental free trade agreement, but there is none of us. 80% of our petroleum consumption is imported. Diesel is imported from Nigeria to Sierra Leone to Zimbabwe to South Africa, many countries of the world, of Africa, within African continent. The price of energy consumption, especially PMS, petroleum-related products, increased sporadically. Why? Because Russia occupied Ukraine. So we are more than 50 countries, and none of us can sufficiently produce what more than 50% of our consumption. But with this refinery in place, I believe that there will be a major reduction in our oil dependency and our energy security, and if you like, oil security as a nation.
Interesting stuff. Mr. Alaje, let me follow up with the fact that NNPC has promised to supply 300,000 barrels per day to this refinery. Obviously, we know the refinery needs 650,000 barrels per day. And experts in the field are worried about oil theft, vandalism, that has brought our production to less than 1 million barrels per day. And we are expected to do 1.6 million barrels. That's by OPEC's quota. So how worried are you about that issue? Because we need steady supply to be able to realize all of this you've reeled out.
Well, oil theft issue have been solved around the world. I really don't know why we are still battling with oil theft around Nigeria, especially the Niger Delta issue. I want to believe that we have since solved this problem in different parts of Nigeria. Before now, we saw that around 2021, 2018, several countries would continue to take several persons will continue to steal oil around Niger Delta. But government provided, signed contracts with some of the locals to protect the pipelines. And you saw the revelation. You media journalists revealed to us what has been happening around our oil region for a long time. And so, but you see, globally, technology has been used to provide solution. If any part of our pipeline is tampered with, we are supposed to know from the control room. So I want to believe that this will be part of the new things that the incoming administration will bring to that sector, because it will be a major setback for us as a nation. If we say we are not importing anymore, we are now producing, and there is issue of oil theft or vandalization of a pipeline, it will be a major setback for us, and it will be a big risk. That is why I strongly believe that with the support of security agencies and, of course, technology, Nigeria would eventually find an end to oil theft, especially that's been happening in some regions in our country.
Mr. Paul, experts and, of course, industry watchers at that event agreed that government really does not have any business in doing business. They are talking about the likes of the Port Harcourt Refinery, Kaduna Refinery. $1.5 billion has been allotted to rehabilitate the Port Harcourt Refinery. We are expecting anything, according to the NNPC, production should start partly, maybe before the end of this year. But what I'm asking you is that Dangote was able to come up with this all alone. Do you think that government can really kickstart, make these refineries work to optimal level the way they used to be, and looking at all that surrounds government, the bureaucracy, and all of that?
Well, my opinion has been made, is in the public domain. regarding the 4 refineries we have from Warri to Kaduna to Port Harcourt, I've made my opinion known within the public domain. And that opinion remains that government should give out those refineries to private sector to run. In the Dangote refinery, the federal government or NNPC has 20% of the shares. So the federation has 20% of the shares. We could repeat the same thing for those refineries. Mark you, before now, those refineries have been given to the private sector. Another government came and reversed the decision of the previous government. I'm of the opinion that we should revisit that, give these 4 refineries to the private sector to manage. When that is done, we are going to further guarantee the supply side. Because Dangote Refinery is business-oriented, even though the federation will have interest up to 20%. But to be truthful, private sector will look for area of profits. Even though government will mandate that welfare is also important. But what if in situation where there is a deadlock? What happens to the population of people? But if government have multiple refineries that has interest, for instance, I'm proposing between 40 to 30% in those 4 refineries so that we can ensure output come. Now, when you give government or government partners money to manage refinery, the motivation is not output. The motivation is not absolutely performance. The motivation is interest. But when it is given to private sector, who understand that they must declare dividend for their shareholders, and that those that are working will be purely based on performance, then you are going to see output and improvement in those refineries. So I'm of the opinion that those refineries, they have no business managing it. They should have gone directly to the hands of private sector to manage, while government maintaining to recall that when President Buhari came to office, NLNG was one of those JVs that came to the aid of the president when financial support was needed or when there is not so much money within the votes of the federation. President Buhari and his team mentioned that not so much was left behind for them for the outgoing administration or President Jonathan administration. So, but NLNG came very quickly, maybe $50 million. I'm not very sure of their actual amounts now. But it came to the aid of the president and gave the administration that soft landing that we saw. The same thing, I think, government should look at how do we allow private organizations to manage these refineries for us.
Great stuff. Mr. Paul, let's stay with crude, getting back to the crude issue. Now, Dangote Refinery would definitely have to buy crude at the OPEX rate. That's in dollars, obviously. And when there's a hike in the price of crude, he would also buy on the high side. But some analysts have suggested that why can't the NNPC subsidize the crude that would be given to the refinery, that's Dangote Refinery? That might significantly help address pricing. I'm talking pricing now. Nigerians need to understand that because Dangote Refinery will come on stream, it doesn't mean that the price of PMS will be 100 naira per litre.
Well, it's a valid point. I remember that just yesterday I was speaking with a number of journalists regarding what possible solution would be so that the impact of subsidy is not as high as we are imagining on the citizen. I'm of the opinion, and I think I've also made this open in the public domain a number of years ago, that when Dangote refineries come mainstream, first of all, we should be able to meet up with our budget targets. What we are exporting for OPEC, that is under our responsibility as a member of OPEC, the difference that is either stolen or not accounted for in the volume of about 300 or 350, as said by the Dangote group that we source within Nigeria, should be allocated to Dangote. And that should come at subsidized rates, if you're asking. If we need to discuss it within the budget, it will certainly be cheaper. The difference will not be more than 1 trillion naira compared to, it may not even be up to 1 trillion naira, compared to 3.3 trillion naira we are losing within within 6 months, half a year. So if we do that, it's a better policy. We're also encouraging production in a way rather than consuming. So that government will have a right to say, for Nigeria, this is the peg, and if the price would increase, it will be over time. It will not be subsidy should not be removed abruptly. This has been the conversation I've had with you on this channel over time regarding the method I think government should adopt. And if you ask Labour, it will be mentioned again, that as far as they are concerned, government have said they were going to convert vehicles from petrol to gas over time, and government has even promised that that will be done within 3 months. As I speak, majority of the vehicle in Nigeria, especially the ones that are used by individuals and for commercial transport, are still on PMS. That on one hand. On the second hand, not so much conversion have taken place. On the third hand, if we have 4 refineries functioning and the supply side is showing increase in supply, then people will buy at actual equilibrium, because when demand remains constant and supply continue to increase, then price will come down. The good news for everybody is this: the transport components of the cost of PMS will certainly disappear. That's between 50 to 80 naira, already going to disappear. So if government now provide crude at relatively cheaper rate, then there is no need for us to even be discussing subsidy. PMS will still be sold the rate at which we are selling, or at most 250 per litre, and that will be good news for the entire Nigerians. And that is why I said Dangote Refinery coming mainstream is a major step forward. But to balance the step, the 4 refineries, so that we don't have a monopoly in the market, which I believe will not be the idea of government, so that we don't have a monopoly in the market, the remaining 4 refineries, as a matter of urgency, must go into the hands of private individuals. And if I can advise the incoming president, this should be one of the things he should consider as his first days in office, in the first 100 days in office, because he has said that he's going to do away with subsidy. I'm saying he will do away with subsidy. What he has not said that he's going to increase prices. And as you know, a minefield of strategy, it could be to announce that companies should bid for the 4 refineries. When that happens, you are going to see a balance in pricing. So Nigeria should be looking at between 200 to 250, and I think that would be a good gift to give to our nation.
So finally, before I'll let you go now, do you think that this move would also open up the Nigerian market, maybe for business people to see that, well, Nigeria is actually open for business? We can go invest our money, and maybe we could have another person coming to invest in the same sector. Do you think that this sends a good signal to investors?
Well, I think it's a big, it will make Nigeria, present Nigeria as a good market for investment. Unlike what we have seen in the last 7 years, foreign direct investment, which is evident in other investments, FDI, and also in portfolio investments. All of the 3 has been going down almost at the same time. But with this refinery in place, you know, that refinery will have ability to generate electricity for a city such as Lagos. So if that happens, we are going to see a major investment coming into our country. So, and I can also tell you that with Dangote Refinery functioning, you are going to see other refinery come. So, and I'm reliably informed that one of the big wigs in the nation, in the business community, also has a license to bring a refinery to Nigeria. So the good news is that the more the merrier, as long as the demand side does not, do not suffer. So if you have more another refinery as big as Dangote, or somewhat in the 50% of that, with the 4 refineries, then nobody will monopolize price. The Nigerian market will expand. You are seeing foreign investors coming to our country to invest, because can be guarantee of energy, can be guarantee of electricity on the other hand, and that will make Nigeria a place for businesses to grow. Remember, with our population, what we need more is industry, manufacturing, growth, and agriculture. So with all of this, we are going to see most desired growth, and eventually, if it is long enough, it can translate into development.
All right, I must thank you so much, Mr. Paul Alaje, for your time. Partner, senior economist with SPM Professionals. Do enjoy the rest of your day.